difference as Tampa downs the Vancouver Canucks 4-2. Let's break it all down right here on Rink Wide Vancouver. And we welcome you inside the Rink Wide Vancouver studios in downtown Vancouver on this Sunday afternoon. Jeff Patterson joined by Patrick Johnson of the Province Post Media as we break down a 4-2 Canucks loss to the Tampa Lightning. One step forward, one step back on this 6-game homestand. Rink Wide, a presentation in part of Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Be sure to use code NATION when opening an account. Well, Patrick, you can't take too many men on the ice penalty with 6 minutes to go in a 2-2 hockey game when you've done well to battle back. And in the end, I said it right up the top, special players and special teams turned out to be the difference in this one.
Yeah, a game very much where I don't think they deserved to lose until they deserved to lose by taking that very penalty. There's so many good things. I was sitting there thinking, what is the story of this game? There were so many good things. Team that scored first did a pretty good job on the penalty kill until the very end, and just battled back. Tough second period, let's be clear, not very good second period at all. No. But battled back and did enough, and we're in the game, and we're probably going to go to overtime, fairly. And I mean, even you think about that Noah Juleson chance, right? That would have been a deserved, if that had goal had gone in, right? You wouldn't have been like, there's no. This wasn't unrealistic for the Canucks to be at a 3-3 tie. They had played well enough to be in that game. But at the end of the day, as you said, it's the big game players. The big game players made a difference for the Tampa Lightning.
Well, I think, too, if you look at the way games are decided at the margins, P.A. Suter scored from Connor Garland on Elvis Merzlikins the other night with a bang-bang play. Same scenario. You're talking about Andrei Vasilevskiy, one of the best goaltenders of his generation here. He makes that stop and prevents the Canucks from getting the goal that they needed to get to overtime. This game reminded me a little bit of the Minnesota game at the end of the road trip as well. That Canucks played hard, played well in a lot of areas, but at the end of the night, if you want to compare the game breakers on Tampa versus the game breakers on the Vancouver Canucks, it was a little too quiet around Elias Pettersson and Brock Besser and Jake DeBrusk, and Braden points in on all 4 goals, and Kucherov back in their lineup, and they're happy to have him, and he has a goal and 2 helpers. So I kind of just spoiler alert when we get to our 3 stars here, but those guys are going to figure prominently. And look, they do this to a lot of teams. Braden Point is one of the best players in the National Hockey League. He had 4 points the other night against San Jose. He follows it up with another 4-point performance. This is what he does. This is why he's going to be central to Canada at the Four Nations face-off. He has emerged as one of the best goal scorers and one of the best players in the National Hockey League. And unfortunately for the Canucks, they really didn't have an answer for those 2 guys in this one.
No, you talk about the little moments and all those things that matter, and you think about the bounces on the first Tampa goal, that was players burying their moment, making time. I find myself thinking as Braden Point carried the puck in and just kind of blasted out of his own end with the empty net and just said, I'm just going to go settle this. I said, of course this is Braden Point getting this done. I mean, it was their stars getting the play done. I mean, Jake Guentzel being the thorn in the side that he was. I mean, you could see literally in Jake Guentzel why the Vancouver Canucks wanted to make him a Vancouver Canuck and what a difference he might have made to this lineup. But these are games. These are the big games, and we've been talking about how will they do against big opponents, and so far they're stumbling against big opponents, I suppose is the best way to put it.
It's stumbling with the end result. Again, I think the Canucks played hard. They're without their captain for 13 minutes of this hockey game in the first period. You could see what a difference he makes. The 4-minute power play that he draws when Hagel gets him in the first minute of play. Talk about slow starts. The Canucks get a 4-minute power play, but Quinn Hughes is unavailable, and it was tough to watch, quite frankly. With all due respect to Eric Brandstrom, he is not Quinn Hughes. We can talk about him being a Quinn Hughes-like kind of player, but when push comes to shove, there's Quinn Hughes, and then there's Eric Brandstrom. 4-minute power play, Pat, and they generated 1 shot on goal in those 4 minutes. And so, yes, they opened the scoring when the captain came back wearing the full fishbowl. But, I mean, they had a real opportunity early in this hockey game to make a statement. And look, the power play's been terrific of late in terms of finishing. So it's hard to... I talk about best players. It's hard to knock Jake DeBrusk. The guy didn't score for the first time in a month. It feels like, he's not going to score every single game. But when you see what the other top-end guys on the other side are doing, the Canucks were unable to match. But it just felt like, I know that there was still 55 minutes of hockey, but those 4 minutes on the power play, certainly a missed opportunity at the very least for the Vancouver Canucks.
15 shot attempts for Tampa tonight on the power play. Like, that's something absolutely high. I mean, like I said, the Canucks were doing a pretty good job on the penalty kill given the pressure. But Tampa was still creating stuff. Canucks with 5 shot attempts in their 6 minutes of power play time. That, to me, is exactly that. That's the difference between good teams and great teams, is that they get their power play going. They take their chances. That, the 4 minute, that was a chance to put everything in a different, frame, right? That was a chance to set the whole game up. And I can only imagine what Rick Tocchet is probably saying right about now about that very power play and just what his power play is and isn't doing. I mean, it was a surprise too, because the power play has been playing well. Like, they've been making stuff happen. They've been scoring goals. It was 6 goals, 7 goals in the previous 8 games or whatever it was. Team that has been creating stuff on the man advantage and just wasn't good enough tonight. And that's, that is a reason why they lost, I guess.
And I'm seeing a lot of people in the YouTube chat talking about Elias Pettersson and the top-end guys. And again, that is one of the stories here. Ricky's asking, when's the last time the Canucks built on a 1-0 lead? And don't tell me the empty netter in Boston. Well, that is technically the correct answer, that they had the 1-0 lead and then into the empty net. But you got to go back all the way to that game in Chicago in mid-October to find the last time the Canucks opened the scoring and then piled on. And so when we talk about missed opportunities here, Quinn Hughes with 4 minutes to go, a sneaky little backhander, but terrific play on his part to create a little space and separation. I think he even used the linesman there as a little bit of a shield to, a little bit more space, and caught Vasilevskiy looking the wrong way. I don't think he was expecting Quinn to fling the backhander. So yes, the Canucks opened the scoring, and people have been wanting them to do that a whole lot more. And now I guess opening the scoring is not enough. You got to add to it. But it's been a while since. And look, that was part of the recipe to their success last year, was getting the early lead and pulling away from opponents. That isn't something that they have done very often, and the numbers bear it out. I had to look it up. But yes, the game in Chicago when Danton Heinen scored, 20 seconds in. And we're going to talk about Danton Heinen a little bit later as we work our way through some of the individuals that either did or didn't perform in this hockey game. But you go back to the game at United Center at the end of the first road trip of the season, the last time the Vancouver Canucks really played with a 2-0 lead at any point in a hockey game. So, on the end, at the end of the day, Tampa goes 2 for 4 on the power play. So there were moments where the penalty kill looked solid, but 2 for 4 is not good enough. And unfortunate for Noah Juulsen. Look, I thought in real time, no way, Gensel batted that puck in, but the replay showed that, yes, he batted it, but then Juulsen was the last man to bat it off Gensel and in. So sometimes it really is just the finest of margins. That was unfortunate for Noah Juulsen, but I do think that goal deserved to count.
Yeah, absolutely goal. If it had gone straight off his hand, I understand why the ref, once they showed the low angle on the replay, I understand why the ref thought he punched it straight in. But there's an entire sequence that happened behind Kevin Lankinen's head that the referee didn't see. Noah Juulsen was doing the right thing. He's boxing his guy out. The puck hit. Gensel sees it and kind of tries to knock it down, and then Juulsen turns and tries to knock it away, and did knock it away. It just went right into Jake Gensel. So, tough one. I was impressed with the shot he got off. That's a guy that has been one goal in his last 100 whatever games. Put it where you got to put it, right? It wasn't like he put it in the body. Like, put it in that little corner. He was going below the blocker. It was a heck of a shot. It could have been a different story for Noah Juulsen.
I think I was surprised that Noah Juulsen was on the ice down a goal with 2 minutes to go. But you're right. Like, into his wheelhouse, he had the chance. And then we mentioned the Piasuta chance as well. There were some opportunities there late in the hockey game that ultimately didn't go the Canucks' way. Michael Chow in the YouTube chat saying, there's no shrug big enough to express my feelings about this game. Come on, it's Tampa. It's a visit from the Tampa Lightning. You can't be that indifferent when you got some of the greatest players in the National Hockey League out there on the ice. But, at the end of the day, again, I'm not knocking the Canucks' effort, but execution, the difference in this one. And ultimately, when it looked like Kiefer Sherwood had done well, sort of against the run of the play there. The second period was so one-sided, aided by a couple of Tampa power plays. And then neither team had a shot for the first 5 minutes of the third period, and the first shot either way is Kiefer Sherwood alone in front. Tyler Myers, nice little switch with Ratu, centering pass, and there's Sherwood to bang home his 8th of the season. It was Sherwood that made it 2-2 the other night against Columbus and sort of was the catalyst to pulling away from the Blue Jackets. Those were the Blue Jackets. These are the Lightning. A little different level of opponent, but still at 2-2, I'm thinking to myself, we've seen this from this Canuck team that it's not always pretty, but somehow effective, and I kind of thought maybe, just maybe, they were going to grind out a result out of this one, but it wasn't to be. But what did you make of the Sherwood goal?
Well, I mean, I thought of the little moments again, right? I mean, they highlighted the line change for Ratu on the broadcast, but if you that was very important. Obviously, a guy comes in, completely gets sort of free reign to go where he wants. The defenders don't see what he's doing. But even more interestingly, if you watch the way the rotation happens on the defenseman, right? Kiefer Sherwood all of a sudden picks himself back, right? Pulls himself back, finds the seam. And so often that is the difference maker. And that is something the Canucks still have been able to do all season, right? Like that has been a strength of their game. That is how they've been able to come back. I mean, think of the Pia Suter chance coming off, I guess coming off the bench as well, but, got blocked. But again, a player finding a gap, finding the hole, coming from deep, and finding a little moment. And, that's how you get your scoring chances. Credit to the Canucks. They have been creating those chances. But I really think it's the power play in that second period. You look at the high danger chances, which is a simplistic way to count, but Tampa had way more. I mean, what our eyes saw was very true. Tampa just had way more going on in the second period. All the good stuff the Canucks did in the third period, they sure could have used that in the second period.
Keep the comments coming to our Great Clips inbox. We'll continue to monitor the chat. It's heating up here on a Sunday afternoon. I thought we were going to get overtime for a third straight early start. It was matinee in Buffalo, went to overtime. The Canucks won. Matinee in Detroit last week. The Canucks won that one as well. And this one had the makings of overtime. But the Lightning, starting a Western road trip, they had other ideas. So they get the victory. 4-2 is the final. Rink Wide, a presentation of Greta Bar, YVR. And you've heard us talking about Greta. But have you checked it out for yourself? What are you waiting for? If you haven't, great atmosphere, so many big screens. There's not a bad seat in the house. You got the arcade games, terrific new street food menu, weekly drink specials. We hosted our first Canucks Army watch party there last month, and there is some talk of another one coming up in the works, so stay tuned for details on that. Greta Bar, the place to be, 50 West Cordova. Greta Bar, let the games begin. We have talked a fair bit about Noah Juleson already. He was involved in a couple of plays there in the third period. The depth of this Canuck defense. I mean, it's been a storyline since day one, and now you take Philip Hronek out of the mix, and then you lose Quinn Hughes for 13 minutes. I thought the Canucks did well in those 13 minutes to survive without their captain, but it's been a struggle for Vinny Desharnais. He's a great guy. He's a ton of fun, but he's a hockey player, and he has struggled. The other night against Columbus on the opening goal, he and Brandstrom got their wires crossed. He and Juleson on the ice for the 1-1, the Kucherov goal, and then moments later he takes the penalty. And so Desharnais figures, for the wrong reasons, in the first two Tampa goals, and it is a question here. Derek Forbort out of his non-contact jersey. He's getting close. Mark Friedman, he's a depth guy. I think they've been reluctant to get there, but you just wonder, can they continue to roll with Vincent Desharnais as one of their 6 defensemen on a regular basis?
It's a tricky one. I think what Forbort brings, I mean, obviously you're going to have to slide somebody over to the right side, but I think what Forbort brings, certainly what we saw in just 4 games, but what we saw was why the Canucks brought him in, is a steady hand. He's not going to blow you away. He's not going to eat top pairing minutes, but he's a guy that you can put on the ice when all the other guys are resting, and he's going to be fine. And he almost certainly will be better than Vinny Desharnais has been so far. I mean, Desharnais's had moments. Listen, he's been useful on the penalty kill. He's had some decent moments defending, but the gaffes are so obvious and so glaring. I mean, that goal, honestly, I was kind of. I mean, listen, there were a bunch of bounces going against the Canucks, but there was a lot of guys standing around, right? Just kind of standing. I'm in the right spot, but pick somebody up. Like Kucherov obviously is one of the great players of his generation, and he scores goals like that, and he gets himself open for moments like that. But I mean, Rick Tocchet said it before. I mean, you were there, Jeff, and I joked to him afterward. I said, this is every coach at every level ever. Take a guy's stick away, right? Like, get your stick on his stick. And that goal right there to me was such an example of a moment where that wasn't happening. Everyone's just kind of staring at the puck. And Desharnais and Juleson probably the most guilty of it. I mean, obviously they're battling in front, but there's guys open. Take them up, pick them up, and this has been a story too much this season, and that's why the Canucks have fallen behind as often as they have.
And I wasn't there this morning when Rick Tocchet met with the media, but he was asked about the challenges of facing Tampa, and he talked about how they are probably the best team in the league with the east-west passing, and you saw the examples of that. McDonough, I mean, that's a sublime pass to Kucherov, and then you're looking on the power play, and they just work it around and cross ice through the seam. Took me back a couple of years when the Canucks gave up those goals on the regular. They had done so well. I pointed out on Twitter the other day that after the Columbus game, they were in the top 10, both special teams. Like, we're talking about top 10 penalty kill in the National Hockey League. It wasn't that long ago the Canucks were 32nd and 32nd by a margin. And so they really have chipped away at that area of the game over the last couple of seasons. You get into the top 10, it may take a hit here after a 2-for-4 performance. But, again, Tocchet had warned us, and look, you can draw it up, you can do video work. Ultimately, you got to stop it in real time. And the Bolts, they execute that east-west stuff. They do as well as anybody in the National Hockey League.
Listen, Ryan McDonough's been a great player, and I'm blown away he's still doing it. But if you're letting Ryan McDonough do it, this is the team that's got higher skill than him, and it was you're absolutely right. Like, we saw some awful hockey, and I found myself thinking, oh well, we haven't. I didn't actually quite think. I think I blocked out the memories of how bad it was trying to watch Tucker Pullman trying to stop a cross ice pass at the end of, you can say at the end of, I guess, the Travis Green era, and briefly, I guess, the Bruce Boudreau era, but it wasn't a good look. And it's funny, 2 games in a row, Rick Tocchet has identified things that he thinks his team needs to do, and then they didn't do them. We had Friday morning getting asked about the rush against the Columbus Blue Jackets. Obviously, they pulled that game out. But listen, if there's any doubt, Rick Tocchet isn't fully prepared for what is going to possibly threaten his team. Because when he answers those questions like that, he is prepared. It is a work in progress, I guess, is the way to put it. And he's trying to... But I go back to what I said earlier. They've been playing some tough teams, and they have, in the end, come up second to a bunch of tough teams. And they've got to figure that out. I mean, it's we can talk about moral victories and hard-working performances and all that, but you got to beat some good teams at some point if you're going to be a real team, a serious team.
And Tocchet post-game said, quote, their best players won that game. He used the term Kucherov show at one point. And that leads us into our 3 stars here on Rink Wide Vancouver. The 3 stars is selected by the broadcast team in the building: Braden Point, Kevin Lankinen, Nikita Kucherov. 2 of the 3 factor in here. We're going, Point was in on all 4 of the goals. I'm going Point as the first star, 2 goals, 2 assists. Kucherov missed the last couple of games, but seamlessly slides right back in. He is their scoring leader. He has a goal, and he gets 2 helpers as well. So there's your first 2 stars. And I'm going with Kiefer Sherwood because, again, his goal at 2-2 I thought was going to propel the Canucks to get something out of this hockey game, even if it was a single point, manage the loss, get it to OT. Didn't happen that way, but Kiefer Sherwood with a goal, 4 shots on goal, and 7 more hits doing what he does. And this is a guy that had 8 goals all of last year in Nashville. He had 10 last year in Nashville. He's at 8 right now. And just looking at the Predators scoring, Philip Forsberg has 9 goals. He's the only guy in Nashville with more than 7. Goal scoring's been a huge issue there. Who would have thought that Kiefer Sherwood was 80% of the way to his total from a year ago on December the, 6th or 8th or 6th? No, 8th. Yeah.
8th. So it's the
early,
8th, Jeff.
Early,
I know. I know it's all blur.
It is.
I had an it's all blur conversation with Pia Suter this week, but no, I can tell you it's December 8th. It's Sunday afternoon.
Thank you.
Earth's watching football, Here. JJ Moser, can we just talk quickly about him? And we were talking about Stanford. Sure. He plus 16 in Corsi. I don't understand how he was spotted so perfectly against everybody. But ate Elias Pettersson lunch when he was on the ice. Played a ton with Victor Hedman. Played a ton with the Stars. A guy that obviously is you're gonna try to if you're turning your lineup over. These are the kind of guys you need to find. Fantastic, calm, performance. The puck was never at their end of the ice, and that means something.
Well, and we should point out, it's the Canucks focus post-game, so we talk about the 13 minutes the Canucks were without Quinn Hughes, absolutely.
Yeah.
But Tampa lost Anthony Cirelli early, the big hit by Noah Juleson. Cirelli played 4 minutes of this hockey game, and Eric Chernak had one shift in the third period, and he left. So they were down to 5D. Chernak's the kind of guy that is going to play when they're protecting a lead. They would love to have had him for the final couple of minutes, but no. J.J. Moser picked up in that Sergachev trade with Utah. Has turned out to, he's landed in a nice spot playing with Victor Hedman, obviously. But those are pretty crooked numbers for the Tampa defender. Just kind of, I didn't notice him a ton, but just quietly going about his business, obviously. And as you said, spending the entire night or afternoon, as it were, in the Vancouver end of the ice.
But a statement about, I bring them up because that's just a statement about the way Tampa is going about their business, right? Finding new guys and integrating them seamlessly, and just, John Cooper, obviously an incredible coach, and just moving forward in a way that the Canucks need to learn from. Like, obviously Rick Tocchet is trying to get all these things done, but they have a bunch of new guys, right? Like, maybe it's time to talk about Tampa tonight, but like, they have a bunch of new guys, right? And some of them are fitting. They're starting to fit better. Jake DeBrusk is fitting better. Kiefer Sherwood obviously has been a great fit. But you need to find guys. The blue line has not been the same story. We talked about Vinny Desharnais already. They've just got to find a way to get themselves all pointing in the same direction, get more consistent. The first period was pretty good. I was like, this is a good first period for a team playing a very high-end team. Canucks team with something to prove. And then the second period blew all that up. And I started going, okay, what were we back to? And then there was the nice chase in the third, and you thought we were going to go to overtime, and then the bounces went against them. And good teams get bounces, and here we are.
Well, I see the YouTube chat now getting into a battle about Ian Cole, whether the Canucks miss Ian Cole. Obviously,
to a degree, sure.
Yeah, but at the same time, like, time is going to catch up to everybody if it hasn't already for Ian Cole, who was a terrific guy to deal with, but he's 35, going on 36 now, and I think the Canucks were looking at other younger options. But look, they knew at the outset when they signed Vincent Desharnais that they themselves basically called him a project, and it's just, I think that the project's been a little tougher to mold and shape than maybe they had anticipated. I think they saw Tyler Myers' clone and saw the season that Tyler Myers had last year and thought, all right, well, hey, we were able to do that with Myers. We can do that with another guy that's 6'7" and, a right shot defenseman. It has been a struggle for Vincent Desharnais. And as we said, with Forbort now getting closer, and Rick Tocchet told me after practice yesterday that because Forbort has only played the 4 games and hasn't played since early November, he needs a few practices here. So I don't think that he's an option for Tuesday night, but I don't know. I mean, I don't know how many practices a veteran guy ultimately would need, so we'll see if a day like this one changes the Canucks' thinking. I just want to mention, and we certainly encourage more contributions and keep the chat going, the Great Clips inbox is a presentation of Great Clips with more than 4,400 hair salons throughout the United States and Canada. Great Clips, the world's largest hair salon brand and the official hair salon of the NHL. Your time's valuable. You use the Great Clips check-in app, see the wait time, check in on your phone, and get your haircut when you want. Great Clips. It's going to be great. All right, you know how this works. You've done this enough. We do a stat that stands out here on Rink Wide. We take a look at the game and kind of dive behind the numbers, and you've thrown a few out there, but we've come up with this one to illustrate just how difficult it's been for the Vancouver Canucks against the Tampa Lightning. This goes back to 2018, so before the pandemic. Now, think about where the Lightning have been in their evolution over the last 5 or 6 years, a couple of Stanley Cups to show for it. We know that the Canucks were in the wilderness for a number of those years. So maybe this isn't a surprise, but it just shows Tampa has gone 9-1 against the Vancouver Canucks. It has been a struggle. And so, again, the effort, not the issue in this one, but at the end of the day, you add it to this pile that it has been a one-sided matchup between the Lightning and the Vancouver Canucks.
That makes me think of, December 2018? Remember the big brawl with all of those good Branson and the Stetcher hit and Danik Martel and all these things?
Oh, yeah. I remember that. Were you there in the 9-2 game in Tampa when it was 2-2 late in the second period and it ended up... Louis scored one of the Canucks goals. That was early in Travis Green's tenure.
Was that the one where they were going to have a day off in Fort Lauderdale, and then they ended up having a practice, and then they still got pumped by the Panthers anyway?
It may have been. Look, they've lost 9 of their last 10. They all kind of run together, unfortunately.
Something like that.
Look, we spent a lot of time talking about the best players on Tampa What did you think was missing? It really was a quiet game, not just for Elias Pettersson, but Brock Besser. They each had one shot on goal in this hockey game. Jake DeBrusk, I think, finished with 3. But DeBrusk himself didn't look all that dangerous either. And not that I want to give him a pass, but like he has been on such a hot run.
No, yeah.
He's not going to score every single game. No. It just sort of has felt that way through the month of November. But yeah, that line together, they just didn't have it in this one.
I thought there were a couple rushes. I think of where PD carried the puck.
Uh-oh. Have we got a frozen Patrick here? PJ, we may have to get him to reload. And we'll get him back in here. As I think, and I look through my notes here, like I got nothing from Elias Pettersson in this hockey game. DeBrusk had the one power play shot in the first 4 minutes. The early power play had a deflection there. And Besser off a Kucherov turnover in the third period when it was 2-2. And Brock's a one-shot shooter. He doesn't need a lot of opportunities. But as I go through my notes here, like I just don't have much from any of those top-line guys throughout this hockey game.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was highlighting Elias Pettersson. He just couldn't hold on the puck. Like a couple nice dangles, cut to the middle, and the puck just squirted. I mean, obviously under pressure, but to me, that I think probably summed up their game exactly. Like they just couldn't quite finish, couldn't quite get that final step. You highlight Besser. I mean, that was probably one of the poorer games we've seen from Brock Besser. We didn't see anything from him. Right? He had a couple shots, I guess, or a couple shot attempts, but. He's become such an effective two-way player, right? You think about him forechecking, he actually, gets in the puck. We just didn't really see any of that tonight. And whether that was because Tampa were just boxing them out better or manipulating the forecheck better or whatever, that there were that's not to say the Canucks had some really good forechecking moments. Like they got in on the puck and they forced some turnovers. That line just couldn't seem to put it together, and this happens, I guess. Maybe lines just run out of steam and they're gonna end up in a new pairing, new setup come Tuesday.
Well, and I'm not even sure I'd go that far. Like, they're allowed to have an off night. It's just unfortunate it comes on a night when their counterparts carry the day. And look, JT's coming back here at some point, and Rick Tocchet's going to have some decisions about what to do and where JT Miller's going to slot back in. And obviously, he's going to be one of their top forwards. So there's going to be some decisions to be made here. I think this is probably a good entry point into this idea that on those days, like, look, your top-end guys are paid to produce. And DeBrusk and Hughes and Pettersson and Pius Suter really have been doing most of the heavy lifting offensively.
Right.
But it's a long season, and there's going to be games where your top-end guys don't come through, and that's where you would love a little bit of support that has gone completely missing. And Nils Höglander's up to 21 games, so he's matched his jersey number. That's not good. Danton Heinen, 16 games without a goal. Hasn't scored since the game in Anaheim. Middle game of that 3-game California road trip that feels like a lifetime ago. And Dakota Joshua is up to 12, and he's in a slightly different category, but 12 game, like the 10th, 11th, and 12th games are looking a lot like the first, second, and third. Like I'm not seeing much distinction or progression in Dakota Joshua's game here. And so, those are 3 guys. Those are 3 guys that absolutely. I think you expect some offense from at some point, and again, I'm prepared to be patient with Joshua given all he's been through. But I talked to him yesterday after practice, Pat, and he just didn't want any part of his struggles. And I get it. He's a pro athlete, and they're conditioned not to discuss the problems. But he just basically shut me down and just didn't want to talk about it, other than to say he's in. When I said, "Do you give yourself some slack?" and he said, "I'm in uniform. I'm playing. I'm an option. I have to be better than I've been." So he knows that it's been tougher, I think, than he anticipated. Just in terms of making an impact on the game. It's a victory that he's back playing as soon as he is after. But if you're one of 12 forwards that's selected to play, it's the NHL. And the league's not going to wait for you. So he does have to find a way to be a little more impactful. Again, I'm not expecting to be the best player on the ice, but even he needs to find a way to contribute something.
All 3 of those guys that we just highlighted, but Joshua first, a guy that I feel like he's there, you just don't see him. We haven't seen him get many chances around the net, I think might be the best way to sum it all, right? Like there's a guy that made his living last year in front, out muscling guys, and obviously, understandably, coming off cancer and the treatments you sometimes have to go through, that will have an impact on you. But there's got to be something. He's not even getting his puck close to the puck, or getting a stick close to the puck right now. So he, as he said, he's in uniform. You got to believe he'll find a way, but he needs to get a stick on it. Niels Höglander, I feel like in many ways gets it. Like he gets the puck. You see him go up on these kind of these rushes up the wing. But it so often feels like he's on an island, and he can't seem to find a way to sync himself up with anybody else. And so it's not a surprise he's not scoring. He's not playing a ton either. But when he's out there, he's just struggling to make a connection with anybody else on the ice. And then, oddly enough, Danton Heinen, who has been his winger and has been his line mate,
we're trying to be patient here, but some connectivity issues with PJ this afternoon. But we'll get him back in there. On the Danton Heinen front, and I get right now, maybe it's hard to have expectations because it almost feels like he's being asked to chaperone the Abbotsford guys who's playing on the fourth line with Aatu Räty and Max Sasson. 10 minutes and 8 seconds of ice time, but not a single shot attempt for Danton Heinen. Yes, there's some utility in the penalty kill, almost 2 minutes of penalty kill time. So, look, he's a low-maintenance veteran, but I think I had some he started the year in the top 6, which just kind of blows my mind. It didn't last very long, obviously, but I don't know. I do think that it's fair, again, to have some expectations. Right now, on that fourth line, there's not a whole lot happening there, although Räty did have an assist on the Sherwood goal. But 26 games into the season, he's got 3 goals, and 2 of them came in the game in Chicago. So he's scored in 2 of the 26 games that the Vancouver Canucks have played.
Shepherding me here, Jeff. I'm sorry about my computer here, but Danton Heinen, you're not wrong. Your point is good. That let's not forget who he's playing with. But I thought even when they signed him, listen, I was a fan of the signing. I've always liked the player. It's a player that the past regime was very interested in and almost traded for him during the COVID season. But you look at sort of the course of his career, and he's obviously had that, he had the big season last year with the Bruins. His first season in Pittsburgh, pretty good. But, and his, I guess his rookie season in Boston, pretty good. But there's been a lot of kind of bumps and ups and downs, and not a consistent double-digit scorer every year. And in general, when you looked at his ice time in Boston, he was used as a third-line winger. When he was at his best in Pittsburgh, third-line winger. The Canucks were kind of hoping, maybe he can be a smart addition to that Miller-Besser line. Well, he's not there now. And, maybe he'll wind his way back there. But he's been useful enough on the penalty kill. He's getting his chances. But there's never that sense of, he's about to break out. You know how a guy will get, Jake DeBrusk at least started getting chances he wasn't scoring, right? You're waiting for a guy to break out. And Hannon just hasn't, we just don't, he's fine. But are they going to soon look for a guy that they can do better with? Is there going to be a search for an upgrade as the season goes along? I don't know.
Well, it's funny because when you look at the roster and you think, okay, when they're completely healthy, depth should be an area that gives them an edge on a lot of nights. But if that depth is 21 games without a goal and some of these guys, and look, the Abbotsford call-ups, the development system is providing guys to the NHL, but nobody's really grasped that opportunity and left a mark. And so it was good to see Räty. We should mention, Max Sasson, and I'm not putting this game on him at all, but when you look at turning points in this hockey game, a breakaway would have been an incredible story if he had scored his first NHL goal to make it 2-0. We talked about stretching the lead. And what a play by Quinn. Casually breaks up a 2-on-1 and then just coolly slings a 60-foot breakaway pass. And, Sasson made a move. I was hoping, a fingers crossed for the guy. But, again, so there's this sort of middle rung that isn't producing, and then you got the Abbotsford call-ups that you can't have huge expectations on, but none of those guys has really shown that they can be productive yet in the National Hockey League. So there are a lot of guys. There are a lot of guys right now that aren't contributing offensively, and when your top-end guys are shut down like they were in this hockey game, that's when it becomes an issue. Now, we're 26 games into the schedule. This hasn't been a huge talking point on this post-game live stream because they've got contribution. I mean, Sherwood, 8 goals. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Pius Suter has stepped up. Like, it hasn't happened often, but it just sort of felt like this was the kind of day where it wasn't happening for the top-end guys, and that next level underneath did nothing to sort of pick them up.
Well, last year, Niels Höglander scored 24 goals, and a lot of that was not playing with Elias Pettersson. I mean, obviously, he was great. Like at that, you're absolutely right. Like Kiefer Sherwood has replaced some of that. Dakota Joshua, right? Like there's a reason why we're talking about these 3 guys. In the long run, I mean, I gotta think Dakota Joshua will find his way. Canucks are a guy that last year. I've got to think that they're looking for Niels Höglander. I mean, they're paying Niels Höglander, or they're going to be paying Niels Höglander to be a similar kind of guy, right? Like the talent is there and the pedigree is there. I don't think it's so simple. There was for a while, it was talk was kind of, well, we've changed things up, and he kind of said this the other day, and I was kind of like, really? Like, we're still talking about when to pull up and when to drive the net and what have you? Like, I just kind of was like, there's a little more here than that, I think. I think it's a case of, are the pieces right for what they're trying to do? I think they are. I mean, Dakota Joshua, in the end, should work, right? Like, he is a forechecking powerhouse. And Niels Höglander, when he's on his game, is a fantastic forechecking player as well, like a guy who gets in tight. So it is a bit of a mystery that those 2, especially to me, I mean, I guess, again, maybe not a mystery in Joshua's case, but total mystery with Höglander. Like, he's playing more. He is playing on the third line, and he's playing okay, but he's not exactly getting shots. And it's not like you're going, oh man, he's on the. If you're going, oh, this guy's getting tons of chances, he's about to break out. He's not on that standard because he's not getting tons of chances. He's just kind of there. He gets on these rushes.
Yep. Yeah, and 10 minutes and 42 seconds of ice time, 1 shot on goal, 2 attempts, and no hits. You want to see him. I mean, those are the things he can control, the work rate, the energy, and getting in and sort of being that disruptive force. And I don't know if that speaks to sort of the mind state right now, but he just looks lost on too many nights where he's kind of caught and not making things happen. And maybe it is, taking too many penalties and thinking about not taking penalties, but in the same breath then not being aggressive and doing the things that have made him effective. So, didn't happen for them today. They lose 4-2 to Tampa. They get a chance on Tuesday against the St. Louis Blues. We'll talk about them in a sec here. But let's get to goaltending. Lankinen was spectacular in the second period.
Yeah.
Puck spent most of that period in the Vancouver zone, 19-5, a new season high for shots allowed by the Vancouver Canucks in one period. They gave up 18 in the third in Buffalo in that Sabres comeback that forced overtime, but this time Tampa gets 19 shots on them, and Lankinen had to be good. You talked about all the power play looks that Tampa had. 5th straight start, 7 of 8, and you know where this is leading because he can't play them all. He shouldn't have to play them all, and it feels now like the door is wide open for the birthday boy, Thatcher Demko, turning 29 today, to finally make his season debut on Tuesday against the Blues.
I love the post from Dollywall before the game where he said maybe he'd play Tuesday, and I'm like, yeah, I guess it's true. He did say that. Here we are. So it seems pretty obvious. I mean, he said it to you and I on, was it Friday? Was it Friday? Thursday when we talked to him. Life blending together. Maybe in the next 3 games, I gotta talk to the coach. Yeah, listen. It'll be a big night for him to get the full day. You know, people are going to be pumped. He'll be excited. I think we've seen how casual and loose he's been for weeks, right? Like, I mean, even going back to training camp, this is where he's at. You know, this is what's going to happen, and you've got to. I mean, the Canucks, the players will say they'll be pumped up, they'll be amped up. How they manage that energy into the actual game, maybe that'll help them start the game well. Maybe they'll score the first goal 2 games in a row, Jeff. Or have I just jinxed them by saying that?
Yeah, how dare you say that? It's a busy Sunday around the National Hockey League. The Canucks are done. There are a handful of other games. Wild one at Madison Square. Yeah. Seattle beat the New York Rangers by a score of 7-5. Did you see Joey Decord was ill? They had to do the old sign, a banker. I think he was like a Wall Street guy that played college hockey, but had his green and gold pads and ready to go. Wasn't forced into the game, although Philip Grubauer took a knock early, and it was sort of that whole Chris Levesque situation again, sitting at the end of the bench. But the backup or the E-bug did not get forced into action there. But Seattle has won 3 of 4 out on an Eastern road trip. They beat the Rangers by a score of 7-5. Now, as I look at what's to come here, the late game tonight is down in Dallas, and that leads us to our Bet365 line of the night. It's brought to you by Bet365, a proud partner of Rink Wide Vancouver. Open an account with Bet365 today. Bet on a huge range of markets. Use code NATION. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. I'm looking at the Flames in Dallas. Calgary doesn't score often. Dallas doesn't give up much. And therefore, I'm taking under 4.5 total goals in this hockey game. I'm expecting a low-scoring game. Jake Ottinger in goal for the Dallas Stars. Pays out at $3.90. So some value there if the Stars and the Flames stick to the script. What is it, 24 straight games for Calgary that they haven't crested 3 goals? Like, that's a tough way to live in the National Hockey League. It's a credit to them for hanging with the pack in the Pacific Division, but it's going to be a struggle if they don't find a way to open up the offense just a little bit. Whatever the case, there you go. If you think it's going to be a low-scoring game, there's still time. You can get in on that one under 4.5 goals. All right. St. Louis Blues come in off a loss in Edmonton last night, their first regulation loss under Jim Montgomery. They're 4-1-1 in their last 6, but Patrick, the Blues are, by almost every definition, the most average hockey team in the National Hockey League. Like, their record is 13-13-2. I think at the start of the day they were the only team in the league at NHL 500. They don't score much. They're 25th or 26th in the NHL in offense. Yeah, they got 3 guys that have 9 goals, so they don't have a double-digit goal scorer. Like, does some of this play into? Do you think the decision to start Thatcher Demko against a lesser opponent? I mean, the afternoon start, the Bolts, and how high-scoring they can be. Like, St. Louis feels like a softer entry point,
right,
for Thatcher Demko.
I didn't believe for a second when I asked Thatcher Demko on Thursday if he needed a proper game day to get his routine in and all that. And no. I was like, give me a break. You're just throwing smoke here. Like, you're just keeping us off the scent. So I kind of, okay, maybe he'll play today, but I kind of said it through gritted teeth and never really, I don't know. I mean, I guess I wrote the game day saying maybe he'll play, wink, wink. But I think it was the combination of everything Talk had said, right? Wanting a couple practices, wanting to just get the net, all the banging, all that stuff, a final look, and then I think in the end having a proper game day. You know, you come in, do your routines, all that stuff, right? Like, this is a goalie who hasn't played since April. You're not going to say, hey, could you skip your usual morning skate routine? Or could you come in at 6, like whatever time he would have had to come in to actually do it properly. I don't think that was, I think that the odds were always kind of against them on Sunday. So, yeah. And the combination, you're right. Like, the other note, by the way, I mean, I can't have the stat last night. You know the old saying, show me a great coach and I'll show you a good goalie, or vice versa. They showed the save percentages for Drew Bannister versus Jim Montgomery, and it's not even close. Like, like whether that's simple changes in defense or just your goalie wasn't playing very well, like that is very much story is my impression. You're looking at Jordan Binnington. Obviously, he's going to 4 Nations, but they have not gotten enough going in goal there. The system maybe hasn't been working that well. Like you said, they're not scoring enough. Was it 72 goals for and 87 goals against? Like, they looked like a team that was struggling to keep up with the Oilers last night. And I don't think the Canucks are going to be able to outskate them the way the Oilers do. But you're right. This is, as the kids would say, Jeff, this is a very mid opponent. And,
like it's just it's a bunch of NHL guys. Like, these aren't bad players. Like Pavel Buchnevich and Braden Shan. We talked about Kyrou. Dylan Holloway scored last night. Jake Neighbors. They got Robert Thomas back. Brandon Saad, again, all NHL guys, but there isn't an absolute gun in the bunch there. And, just collectively, not a team necessarily, I don't think that should scare the Vancouver Canucks. But, again, the way the Canucks play on home ice, they're 4-6-3 after this loss to Tampa, 4 wins in 13 games. So that remains a massive part of the storyline for this Vancouver team. Just one other thing I want to mention on the St. Louis Blues. And, he's not going to be a marquee player at this stage, but Ryan Suter turns 40 next month.
Whew.
Part of that 2003 draft class, he was a Nashville pick. Still averaging close to 23 minutes a night. This guy is closing in on 1,500 National Hockey League games. He's going to be the 7th defenseman in history to get there. I was looking at this earlier. He was a workhorse in Minnesota. He had 2 seasons in a row where he averaged over 29 minutes a night.
What?
Yes. He had 2 seasons. We think Quinn Hughes plays a lot. He's always been a huge minute guy. He had 2 seasons where he averaged 29 minutes a night.
That's incredible. I mean, that used to happen, right? It's just so sad. I mean, I was made the joke the other night of, whatever season it was that Adrian Aucoin in New York was getting rolled out for 40 minutes a night or whatever it was. It's still staggering to think about. But 29 minutes, listen, Ryan Suter's been a great player. He's getting paid really well to keep playing hockey because, of course, he had a huge buyout in Minnesota.
All right. Yeah, and then went to Dallas and now to St. Louis, but he's still finding a way, and he's going to turn 40 in January. And by season's end, I think he's going to be something like 22nd all-time in games played in the National Hockey League if he stays healthy and plays on a regular basis. So, just a side note to the St. Louis Blues. Ryan Suter and the St. Louis Blues coming to town on Tuesday. I have to imagine with the late start on Hockey Night in Canada and the fact that they would have lost an hour coming this way if they had flown with the circus that will finally leave town here after tonight. I'm guessing the Blues probably hunkered down in Edmonton for an extra night.
Oh my God. Did I hear it right that Columbus literally left? They went to Winnipeg after here, so they were one night.
Think about you lose 2 hours going to Winnipeg.
That's all I can think about. Was they're getting in at 4 a.m.
They just wanted to get out of here, I guess, hotel nights and the costs and everything else. And so, yes.
Well, they stayed at the Pan Pacific, which is
I heard that.
That's a nice, but that's not,
not
on the usual team rotation. That's where you go for a cruise, I guess.
Don't think it's cruise season. I don't know that. I think cruise season has come to an end.
It's just Swifty season, Jeff. Just Swifty season.
For another night. And we've avoided I think we were exhausted. We've used up all of our Taylor Swift puns. We had some fun on Friday, but didn't want to go down that road. So end of an era, whatever the case. It's not quite the end of the Black Friday sale here at the Nation Network. We've been talking about the fact that there's 15% off the latest gear and all the classics. Free shipping on orders over $200. If you need the perfect gift for your favorite fan, Nation Gear has you covered from hoodies to hats. Make the holiday season legendary for the hockey lover in your life. You can check out all the styles and selections at nationgear.ca. I thought for a short while that maybe the Canucks would take Monday off and get back at it Tuesday, but if Thatcher Demko is going to play on Tuesday, Rick Tocchet mentioned this morning when he met the media something about getting him another practice, so I'm guessing that Monday will be a practice day for the Vancouver Canucks, and we'll wait. I don't think we're anticipating that JT Miller's quite ready to join the group just yet, but I suppose we have to be on JT watch at some point this week.
Yeah, I mean, you look. I mean, we were discussing this. I think yesterday, even just looking at how it is. Canucks are technically scheduled to be doing something every day this week, which seems highly unlikely. But yeah, listen, the Miller's. You spotted his gear back in his stall, so
yep.
And there's a plan. So he's
yes,
has been winked at least. I mean, I appreciated Rick on Friday. Looking at far and saying, I'm not telling you what it is, but there is a plan. Listen, Demko assuredly wants another practice. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I mean, you get a practice, then they kind of do the old optional morning skate thing on Tuesday, right. And probably take Wednesday off, I guess. You got Florida, and then Boston, and then Colorado, and then Utah.
We'll see.
And, you look at how things shake out. Will they actually? I mean, without a doubt, they put all those practices on the schedule because they can just cancel it, right? They need to look at getting Miller back in, and they got to get Demko back in, and this is the maximum flexibility schedule. And they are required. So people understand. They are required to, at the beginning of every month, declare 4 days off from all team business to the players, they would have. Well, that would include obviously Christmas and Christmas Eve.
Right.
So,
December's a little different just because
yeah,
of the
it's a little tricky. And then I think they can't actually have things. I think Christmas Eve technically is one. Anyway, it's all a bit tricky because they aren't allowed to do anything on Boxing Day. You know how there's a team every year that gets fined for flying on Boxing Day.
Right, they fly. Yeah,
it just makes way more sense. But anyway, yeah, it's listen. As people said to me, I mean, I do my own mailbag on Fridays, and Canucks fans generally seem still reasonably confident. They look at how this team has done and what they've managed to do, and they're kind of punching along and doing all right. And they're like, well, they don't have Demko, and Miller will be back, and Hronek will be back, and in general, if this team's healthy, they should be pretty good. And they're not wrong. They're still. I memean, I appreciated your question the other day about the power play getting it done without Miller. And they've been pretty good.
They had, but then you take Quinn.
But
Quinn
he's
out
still
of the
one of their
equation,
best players,
Right, but take Quinn out today, and that was a bridge too far. That early power play, just no Miller, no Quinn. Obviously, they were up against it. The other thing we should mention too is that after a crazy schedule of concerts and things at Rogers Arena. Month of December, pretty quiet. They've got the building to themselves, save for lacrosse on Friday. So that may add to some of their practice plans just in terms of having their own building and not having to ship out to UBC. So maybe Friday becomes their day off when the lacrosse guys take over their own building. Who knows? We'll worry about that. We'll be there whenever they practice.
It's our problem.
Exactly. Our problem, not the listeners and the viewers. All right. Your internet held up for this final segment, so that's the good news in all of this.
Get it.
Neither do I, but we almost didn't get you there for a chunk of the show. But appreciate your contributions, as always, PJ. And I know that you'll be joining Matt and Blake throughout the week, and we'll be reading your accounts of
Convo tomorrow. Just got the call.
Your Convo tomorrow.
I'm on Convo.
There you
Claus
go.
Gave me the call.
Saves me a promo for that show. So hey, I like to finish up. I like to finish up by telling people to check out Canucks Army post game. Quadrelli's got his instant reaction, and there'll be the Stanchies and the Statsies and mailbag on Mondays. So lots coming up on Canucks Army. Make sure you check that out. I know that you guys will have this game covered at the province as well. Coos on duty here on this Sunday
all
afternoon.
over today. Yeah.
Yeah. So. All right. Well, thanks for your help. We look forward to Convo on Monday. Our thanks to Karin behind the scenes, working through the technical blips and issues. We got it done. We got to the finish line here. The Tampa Lightning defeat the Vancouver Canucks by a score of 4-2. St. Louis coming up on Tuesday, and that's when we'll be back with our next episode or edition of Rink Wide Vancouver. So for Patrick Johnson, this is Jeff Patterson. Thanks so much for checking us out here. You have been watching and listening to Rink Wide Vancouver.